Hey, it's Roo. Hey, it's winter, and behind me the winter wheat is growing, and it's cold and it's wet and it's muddy again, and we are standing in the mud, Poo Pick Pondering. So what I'm pondering right now is how to create time out of no time. What do I mean by that? Well, we all, I think, suffer from, to some degree, a feeling that we don't have enough time to do the things we need to do. And obviously when you keep large livestock and you have to spend quite a lot of time cleaning up after them, let alone doing other things with them, let alone children, let alone job, let alone other things, it can really feel sometimes like it's just piling up, and how on earth do we get the things done we need to get done? So I was pondering this, and I do meditate in the early mornings as I lie between sleeping and waking. And I was thinking, how do I create time out of no time? Because I've got a book that I'm writing. I don't seem to be having much time for that lately. And I've got other projects on. And I was beginning to feel this slight panic of, oh my gosh, how do I? So I thought, let me start with a question. I don't have an answer, but starting with a question is always useful. So the question is, how do I create time out of no time? And then something came to me. It's that it comes down to several things. One is, of course, the obvious, which is multitasking. For example, I like to plant trees. So those of you who know me well know that I plant rather a lot of trees, and I plant them sort of all the time. I'm going to plant a tree right now. This is a conker, a horse chestnut. I'm going to plant it here in the fence line. And in some of the places that we've lived and worked with horses, there are now quite nice hedges of mature trees over the last 20 years that we've planted. This, I presume, will end up being the same. Am I planting trees, or am I picking poo, or am I making a YouTube video? Well, I'm doing all three. That's an obvious multitasking kind of event. But it goes beyond that. There's a sort of quantum aspect to it. If you just follow me with the camera, I'm going to get another pile of poo over here. And this quantum aspect seems to be that when one begins to consider how to answer a dilemma, just by throwing that question out into the universe, one seems to kick off an equal and opposite reaction of an answer. It may not come, they usually don't come in convenient time frames, like in 5 minutes, sometimes they do. But we know from experience that they'll tend to come. So what came to me was, ironically, to do less. That old adage, less is more. So I used to, for example, feel I didn't have time to meditate. And I put off meditating because it felt like hard work. Or I would say, oh, I'm meditating when I'm doing other meditative things, like riding my horse or walking in nature. And although there was a certain truth in that, excuse me while I wipe my nose, a part of me deep down knew that it wasn't really the same. And I was just avoiding, somehow I was afraid of failure in meditation or something. Then when I started saying, okay, well, sitting on a cushion in an upright position that is a bit painful and uncomfortable, and trying to clear my mind, which is impossible because my mind goes all sorts of places all the time, as I'm sure yours does. Well, what if I just let that go? And what if I just went on YouTube and listened to guided meditations while I lay between sleeping and waking? And I found my way to the meditations of, I'm sure some of you are familiar with them, Abraham Hicks, Esther and Abraham Hicks, and also to a practice called Yoga Nidra. Some people call it non-sleep, deep relaxation. And these both sort of let you off the hook for having to clear your mind. They say, oh, if your mind wanders, don't worry about it. It'll come back at some point. If you stop listening to the person guiding through the meditation, don't worry about that. You'll probably drift back in as well as you drift back out. And if you just keep doing this over time, and thinking about the things that are sort of somewhat dilemmas or questions, the answers will sort of come, and time will be created out of no time. I found this to be really true, and I can't quite explain it, but since I started taking this time in the morning and sometimes in the evening, and very, very occasionally in the afternoon, there are very occasional days where I manage to do it 3 times in a day, but I won't bullshit you and say that I do that all the time, but I do try to do it at least in the early morning. I have found, weirdly, that I have more time, even though I have less time. Somehow the procrastination gets less. I'm not saying it goes away, I totally procrastinate, but perhaps not as much or not for as long. And I realized an awful lot of my feeling of having no time was spent thinking about having no time. And what about if I spent the time thinking about having no time, doing the things I wanted to do or needed to do? And what if whenever I felt I had no time, instead of panicking, I used it as a, it's like a little beeper or a little pager or a little alarm, remember pagers? Or a little alarm clock or something, drawing my attention to the fact that, oh, this is the thing I'd like to do right now. And if I can't do it right now because I'm in the middle of some other task, can I combine it with the task I'm doing, like planting the tree and poo picking and making a video? Or can I prioritize the time? And what I've generally found, particularly for writing, is it doesn't really take as long as I think it's going to take. If I sit down for a good hour, I can get quite a lot done. But I realized that an awful lot of my not having time was because I was spending time thinking about not having time. So by spending that same time in that sort of meditation time, which is really only about 15 minutes or sometimes half an hour, somehow I created time out of time. And this has been intriguing to me because there's no doubt I seem to be getting more done. So do you have a way of interacting with this quantum field? Do you have a way of creating time out of no time? What works for you in this? I know a lot of people have tips on this. We'd love to know. What are your tips? What do you do? How do you create time when you have no time? Let us know in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, subscribe. It really helps the channel. And we will be doing more in-depth analysis of these questions from Poo Pick Pondering over on the main website, longridehome.com. See you next time for the Poo Pick Ponderings. Ooh, there's poo on my shoulder.